Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. Today's video is a repot of a Grammatophyllum orchid. Watch the transformation. Hello everyone, this is Dana at the Orchid Hut, and as mentioned in the brief introduction, this video is going to be a repot of a somewhat neglected Grammatophyllum orchid. Now, there's kind of a history of this plant, which I will get into as I'm doing the repot. There's also some things that have been happening as I've been trying to get set up for this video. I probably should title it How the Grammatophyllum Fell Over, because every single time I was trying to get set up or take photos or adjust the camera, this plant has become so top heavy that it just won't stand up on its own at all. As I decided how to position the camera for today's work, there's just no way that I can show the entirety of the plant as well as the detail of the work that I'm doing at the same time because it's just so large. So as I point out different features of the orchid and what I'm doing, I will try my best to get it focused in the camera in such a way so that you can see what's going on, but I do apologize if some things are occluded and it's just a result of the plant being so large and it's continuing to fall over, and it's a bit more difficult to handle than a normal sized orchid. You can see that the leaves are rather tall and long and lanky. Okay. So in addition to the repot, there is some cleanup on this orchid in the way of leaves and roots and sheaths and whatnot. Old leaf that just fell off. This one happily grew outside for me last year. I purchased it, I believe, in the late spring, so I've had it about a year. It did grow this new growth right here where my hand is last year. But you can tell it's in a rather small pot. Roots are coming out in every direction here. And it needs to be in something larger so it stops falling over and has room to grow new pseudobulbs this year, which will probably be happening somewhere right along this part of the plant right here. Okay, so this video is also going to be divided into different sections as I go along, just so that I can kind of readjust and clean up. And I will take a break right here so that I can get my supplies ready. Be back in just a second. Okay, so let's first talk about all of the things I have in front of me in the way of prepping for this particular repot. Sometimes the biggest time-consuming part of repotting an orchid is just getting yourself ready to do it, and I found that to be true in this case. So let me kind of walk through what I have. I am anticipating needing to cut some of the leaves, possibly some of the roots from this orchid, and so something that's pretty important for that step is to make sure that you have some sanitized pruners. So I'm going to go ahead and flame those right now so that those pruners will be ready to go, and I will know that all of the cutting on this particular plant is sterile. And when I'm finished working with this plant, I will flame these cutters again. Always on the safe side, I flame my pruners both before and after working on a particular orchid. So that's ready to go. And then I have another pair of cutters here because I'm already noticing that the roots are coming out of this plastic pot. I don't want to lose those roots if I can help it. So I have some wire cutters here which will certainly, I hope, cut the plastic pot so that I can salvage as many roots as possible that are growing through the bottom. I have my hydrogen peroxide 3% ready. When I make a cut that seems like it's into, sort of tissue that's exposed, I'll probably go ahead and spray. the root system as well as cuts that I do. And I may or may not choose to use cinnamon, which I have right over here off camera. And then I have my new pot ready to go. I really debated on this point because typically when you repot an orchid, you don't want to size up too much on the pot. It overwhelms the root system. But this particular orchid is growing in such a small space, and when it produces a new growth, the bulb is so large that I feel like if I don't upsize the pot quite a bit from what it's in right now, that, you know, the repot won't even last me a year. And I would really like to at least keep this orchid in this pot for 2 years if possible. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of take the risk here and put it in something much larger than what it's in right now. Not typically what you do with orchids. And then as far as the media goes, if you try to research orchid growing media for Grammatophyllum orchids, you won't find a lot of helpful information. And I'll rewind quickly to another experience that I had with Cymbidium orchids. When I went to repot mine, I looked online and there was a source that, in a very helpful way was trying to recommend media for particular growing environments, and I followed that without any success at all. So even if you do find something that is suggested for growing media, I think you still do have to use whatever growing experience you have mixed with some common sense, and try to just do what you think is best for your particular growing environment, and then just kind of cross your fingers and fine tune what you understand to work, as time goes on. So if I look in the pot right now, how this Grammatophyllum is potted, there are so many roots in this pot, it's difficult to even see what it was repotted in before, or what it was potted in before. So as I cut away the pot, we might be able to tell a little bit better how it was potted originally. But what I did is I just took some of my Phalaenopsis orchid mix, and I mixed in some extra perlite, which is small sponge rock, and I mixed in a little bit of charcoal pieces. And I just made my own mix here. Now, the reason that I did this particular mix is because when I look at the roots of this Grammatophyllum, they're smaller roots than, say, like a Phalaenopsis, but they're larger roots than like a Dendrobium. So, I'm thinking that the bark mixture needs to sort of parallel the root system that I'm seeing. So I don't want a mix that's too coarse, because I do think this orchid likes a fair amount of water retentiveness from one watering to the next. And then I don't want a mix that's too small that's going to hold on to too much moisture, because now I'm going to have this orchid in a larger pot, and I really don't want it to stay wet for an extended period of time either. So I'm kind of trying to balance what I see with the root system versus what I know with different orchid media in my growing environment outside. And, it absolutely does not mean that this particular formula would work for you where you're growing your orchids. So I'm mostly just explaining my thought process so that possibly you can do the same when you repot any orchids that you have growing outdoors. Okay, so that's enough about the media. Now, what we're going to do next is I'm going to lay out some paper towel here. I'll bring the orchid back and we will get ready to cut the pot away and see what we're dealing with. Okay, so bringing the orchid back here into view. Let me give a little bit of a story here about what has happened to this orchid in the last few months, because some of what you're going to see on the leaves relates to what it experienced. Okay, so last summer it was growing outdoors. I brought it in for the winter, and it was in my secondary growing space under the grow lights. Everything was perfectly fine I sort of cut back on the watering a bit because it was indoors in winter and it really wasn't growing. Then there were some really nice sunny spring days, and I took the Grammatophyllum outside to the patio in a shaded area, and it looked so lush and green and happy. And the next thing I knew, I looked out on the patio and my shady spot was no longer shady. The sun had moved across in such a way that now the orchid was in full sun, and I hurried up and I moved it. But there are some indications on this particular plant now that I was a little bit too late to avoid sunburn. So let me show you what happened after that one day on the patio after having been inside for the winter. So you can see here that there are sunburned leaves. And before, I even cut this pot away, I'm going to go ahead and just remove these leaves, okay? Now, this is just more for, how the plant is going to look when I'm finished. Yes, the leaves are going to be cut, and I'm leaving kind of a margin of tissue where that sunburned area is. But overall, I think the orchid will be fine. This one is this is maybe more like bug damage. This is probably more like a case of a leaf miner or something. But I'm going to go ahead and cut that away as well. And this is not any kind of must-do step. This is not something that, you have to do. There's a little bit more sun damage right here, a little bit right there. I think I'll just go ahead and cut it right here though. This is not something that you have to do. This is just something that I'm choosing to do to maybe make the plant a little bit more visually appealing when it goes back outside. Okay, so here's maybe a little bit more of leaf miner damage from an insect. I'm going to go ahead and leave that. That's not too bad. Let's look over here on the other side. You can even tell right here, I don't know if that's going to show on the camera, but even like right here where my finger is, there's a little bit of sun damage. This leaf is, for the most part, going to be lost. So I'm not going to bother cutting it because I think this one is yellowing and dying away. Anyway, this is an older pseudobulb, so just inspecting the leaf here. This one's not in great shape, but let me kind of decide here what I want to do. This one's not in great shape either. Neither is this one. I think on this older pseudobulb, I'll go ahead and I'll remove some of this. Okay. This leaf really sort of floppy. You can even tell that the plant is really dirty right inside here, so when I take it back outside I will probably give it a really good sprinkle with the shower sprayer to wash some of that out. Okay. All right, not looking so bad now. This one I think will fall off on its own. Okay. Not a great leaf, but I think I'll leave that one. Okay, so now I have taken away some of the bits that were making it top heavy and causing it to look not so great. And we will go ahead now and let me move those cutters out of the way. And I'm going to attempt to remove this pot down here where these roots are like exploding out of the bottom. So once again, I'm going to struggle here to try to keep this on camera. And if I can figure out how to work these cutters in. Now, there is no way to absolutely save all of these roots. This is just a matter of saving some of them. And I may find that this pot is not going to cooperate with these cutters. Let's see. well, I think it'll work, but the roots are so embedded in this plastic that it will probably have to be cut away in bits and pieces. And I'm having to find places where the cutters will actually fit, because there's more plastic down here at the bottom than you can see, but I can feel it with the cutters. Okay, so another little story while I'm doing this tedious task here. Getting ready for this video, you know, I sort of teased at the beginning that I should have named this video How the Grammatophyllum Fell Over. But I could have also named this video One Hot Mess After the Next. In addition to the Grammatophyllum falling over, I was having great difficulty just getting myself ready to do this video. And I don't know, content creators who actually show their faces and their clothing in order to create their videos, I do not know how they get themselves camera ready for all of those different videos that they do. That would just take so much time. You know, my usual day at home doesn't involve putting my best clothes on and fixing my hair and makeup. But one of the things that happened right before I made this video is, and for the gentleman watching, you can kind of fast forward through the next minute or two of this video if you don't want to hear my nail polish story. But earlier in the week, I had put nail polish on, and for the ladies, I don't know how many of you have had this experience, but somehow as you're doing the nail polish, you're like already regretting what you're doing, because you either don't like the color or you don't like how it's going on. Well, that was this nail polish. It was neon pink, and it had a little bit of glitter in it. And as I was putting it on, it just was looking way too out there. Well, I went ahead and I finished it, and I've kept it on for a few days. And then today, it kind of wasn't, it was looking even worse than when I had first put it on. And I thought, you know, I can't make this video with that hot mess nail polish. And so I thought, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just do the video, it won't matter. And then I said, no, I gotta take it off. It just looks too bad. So I went to try to take the nail polish off, and it was not cooperating. It was like the neon pink part was coming off, but the glitter was still sticking. I thought I was gonna have to go out into the garage and get paint thinner to get that nail polish off, but it finally came off. I'm glad to be rid of it. And I'm going to throw the entire bottle away because I don't ever want to think that I should use that again. Now, this pot, as you can tell, is being particularly difficult. And I'm really, really struggling with how to get the plastic off. And all kinds of things in the background are falling over because of the leaves. Really struggling trying to figure out how to get the plastic off, but you see the process, okay? You see the process of how I'm having to cut away little pieces and, you know, trying not to damage the root system too much as I go. However, I will tell you that trying to do this, you know, in front of a camera lens is adding even more difficulty to the job. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here. I'm going to get this orchid in a position where it's a little bit easier for me to deal with this really, really tough plastic. I mean, this plastic is like heavy duty stuff. And I will be back when I've almost got this thing out of the pot. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, so I think this orchid is almost free. The cutters that I had chosen for this were actually fine. It's just that I needed to be in a different position to get the leverage to cut the pot. Okay, so let's see. You can tell what I did here is I just made one straight cut up the side. And now I should be able to peel this pot away. And part of what's making it difficult, as you can tell at the bottom here, there was like a core of plastic. And I think, going to have to tear some of the roots to get that core of plastic out of the bottom. And maybe a few more cuts here and there. Okay, some roots lost, but not too bad. This core of plastic down in the bottom of that pot was causing great difficulty because the roots had really entwined themselves around that. Okay, so orchid is free. Now, in case you were wondering what the name of this Grammatophyllum was, I can pull the tag out a little bit easier now. And it is named Broga Tiger Calipana. So if I'm not mistaken, there's an orchid nursery in Hawaii that has the name Calipana, and so this may be one of their hybrids. Okay. All right, so roots, oh goodness. Okay, so this was in bark. I'm able to tell now a little bit better that it was planted in sort of bark chips like this. Okay, so you might have noticed a little break in the video there. I was standing on a piece of sharp plastic and I had to get that up off the floor. Okay, so I can tell that this was potted in large bark, and that even looks like a piece of lava rock. And there's not going to be any way to work out all of these old bark chips. So in a case like this, oh, and some sponge rock, which I have, added to the media I'm going to be repotting it in. No way to work this out. If you, even attempt to do that, you will likely damage the orchid to the point where it may not recover. So this is a case where what we do is we leave the root system and the old potting media alone, and we just sort of plop it into its new home, clean it up as best we can around the top. You can tell right here that I have already pulled away one of the older sheaths that was covering the pseudobulb, and I can just cut just the tiniest little bit of that away, just for the purposes of cleaning up. There's just not a lot you can do in a situation like this. And I did notice, and I'll point this out, there was some extra little bug damage here. New root, but bug damage eating into the pseudobulb. It doesn't look like it caused any sort of really bad damage. Here you can see again, it looks like something maybe like a snail made some bite marks on there. And that's one of the reasons too why you want to keep as much of this dead sheath away, because critters and whatnot like to hide in that area between the sheath and the bulb. But we are going to leave this just like this and not do much else. So let me take the next little break, get my mess cleaned up, and we will repot this orchid, which is not going to take that long. Okay, be right back. Okay, so I have my new pot here. I have taken some of my orchid media mix here for this orchid, And I have filled up the bottom of the pot, just trying to estimate, you know, where the placement of this orchid is going to need to go. I had already decided ahead of time that if it was potted a bit low and I didn't, you know, put media all the way up to the top of the pot, that would be okay. This, and just so that you can kind of see, you need to look like, you know, where the new growth is going to be coming from. So new growth will be happening here, and if I have this much media filling up the bottom of the pot, the new growth is going to be too far away from being able to get its roots into the media. So I've got too much down here, and I need to get rid of some of that. All right, let's try that. Now that could be a bit better, but it's still looking like a bit much. Okay, that's looking even better. All right, so now the strategy is, you know, this is a large orchid, and there is an old side to the plant, which is here, the older pseudobulbs. The new pseudobulbs are growing in this direction, this being the newest one right here, okay? So new growth will be coming in this direction. So I'm gonna put the older part of the plant against the side of the pot right here, so that the new growth has the space of the new pot on this side, and hopefully it will be able to stay in there a couple of years. Now, sometimes on smaller orchids, I don't do the placement this way because I think orchids not centered in the pot look a bit strange. But in this case, there's a really good reason for doing it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead now and begin filling this in. Again, very top-heavy orchid. If it were not for my left hand on the back side of the pot, this orchid would be falling over. We'll see what happens once I get some of the media filled in. Now it will stand without falling over. That's already a huge improvement. Okay. Leaves going everywhere. Hopefully I'm not completely off camera here. Okay. All right, let's have a look. So we're going to press down just a bit. Not too much, but just a bit. On the side of the plant where I gave it space to grow, you know, the bark fell down into the pot rather easily. But let's have a look on this side, okay? Now, what you can see is the outline of the root system, you know, as it was in that smaller pot. And there is no bark between the pot and that part of the root system. And that is not necessarily ideal. So I will be, once I get it outside, I will be taking like a small wooden skewer, and I will try to get a little bit of bark to fall down between this gap right here. I may not be successful, in which case I'll just have to leave it. But if you can work a little bit of bark up against that older root system, that would be the ideal circumstance. But, you know, in this case, as the orchid puts on new growth around this side, it does have, you know, a little bit more space to grow in this direction. Okay, so that finishes our repot of this Grammatophyllum. You'll notice that I didn't even use the peroxide because we didn't really cut on the root system per se. Let me see if I can find the tag, because we should always make sure that we add the tag back. And this orchid will be going outside now into a spot where I don't need to worry about the sun sort of taking over and making more sun damage. All right, gigantic success, because now I can remove my hands and the orchid actually stands on its own. Okay, thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. The subscribe button will be coming up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching, and talk to you next time.